In this video, we're going to go over some more string methods and how to use the standard Python library documentation to understand and work with string methods. So inside the documentation, we are still in the string types under string methods. Let's scroll down here a little bit and we'll see that we have this method count here, and it takes the substring parameter, which is sub, and then it also has optional parameters for start and end. And it tells us under here that it returns the number of non-overlapping occurrences of a substring sub in the range start to end. Basically, start and end are used to slice the string. So if we tell it to slice from 0 start to 5 end, it's going to look in the first 5 characters of the string to see if this substring is in there. So let's go ahead and jump into the development environment where I have this weird AB string. And the reason I did this is because I want to show you that when I do this count, it's going to find the first occurrence of ABA. And then even though this right here is an occurrence of ABA, this A overlaps with the first occurrence. So because it's non-overlapping, it's going to skip this occurrence and go on to this one, and then finally this one, and it's going to return the value of 3. And we'll see that now. I'll type in mystring.count. Pass it in the substring of ABA. And when I run this, you'll see that we get the return value of 3. And if I wanted to use the optional start parameter, I would put a comma. And then let's say I want to start at index 4, which will be this A right here. It's going to find this occurrence of ABA and this occurrence of ABA and return 2, as you can see here. And then if I also threw in the optional parameter for end, it's only going to look at this substring right here to see if it finds the occurrence of ABA, so it will return the value of 1. So let's go ahead and jump back into the documentation and find another method. Scroll down just a little bit. We're going to look at the find method, which again takes a substring and a start and end parameter. And it says right here that it returns the lowest index in the string where the substring sub is found within the slice. And it tells us that it's going to return -1 if the sub is not found. So jumping back into our environment, I'm going to change this string here to you know you can do it. And I'm going to replace the count method with the find method. And then in parentheses, I'm going to tell it to look for the substring u. And when I run this, it's going to return 0 because it's going to find this u here, and it's returning the first index where it finds this substring. And since this substring starts at index 0, that's the index that it's going to return to us. And when I run this, you'll see that we get the output 0. And if I were to throw in the optional parameter of start and I put a 1 in there, now it's going to start looking at this string from the O here. So it's not going to find the first occurrence of u until here, which is index 9. And we'll see we get that output there. There are times in Python where either in the standard library or maybe a third-party module, you're provided with multiple methods that basically perform the same operation but handle them differently. So if we look at the find method here, it told us that it will return a value of -1 if it does not find the substring that we're looking for. So if I change this to look for a z, which is not in this string up here, and I run it, we'll see that we get a -1 just like the documentation told us. But if we jump back into our documentation and scroll down just a little bit, we'll see that we have this method here, which is called index, and it takes the same substring start and end parameters. And it tells us that it's like the find method, but it raises a value error when the substring is not found. So if we jump back into the environment, if I change this find to the index method, and I tell it to look for this z again, this time it's going to raise a value error. Now, the biggest problem that happens when an error is raised is it will crash the program if it's not handled correctly. So error handling is something that we're going to talk about much later in the series, but just keep in mind that there may be multiple built-in methods where one method may have a standard way of dealing with an error, such as returning -1, and the other way would raise an error, which will allow you to deal with the problem however you see fit. Now let's say that instead of wanting to know what the index was of the first occurrence of a substring, I just wanted to know if a substring was in another string. I can do this by using the in operator. Whenever you use the in operator, it produces a Boolean value of true or false. So if I wanted to, I could say the string u in my underscore string, And since U is in this string, this is going to output the Boolean value true. So when I hit run here, I get this output true. And if I tried to check for something that was not in this string, like the word your, and ran this, I get the output false. The in operator is something that we are going to cover a bit more in detail once we get to Boolean values, but just know that the in operator works on collections to test for membership, so it could also work on lists, sets, tuples, or dictionaries to see if an element is in one of those collections. And there is one more thing I want to bring to your attention in this video. If we scroll back up to our find, well, actually, you know what? Let's go up to our count. If we take another look at this count method here, we'll see that the optional parameters start and end are inside square brackets. What this means is the parameter that is inside the nested pair of square brackets cannot be used until the outer parameter has been used. So I can't do something like type end equals and then set the ending index number. I have to set the starting index first. And this is in contrast to methods like encode, where the parameters are shown as the parameter name equals and then a default value. So what happens with this method is if I wanted to change errors but not change encoding, I could just type errors equals and then set the value to be whatever I want it to be. So now that we've been able to go over a couple of the built-in string methods and see how to read the documentation, in the next video we will practice some more methods.